Hi there and welcome to Loopy Mabel Vintage Style Crochet. If you're new to this channel, hello and welcome, and if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button and you'll be kept up to date with all my lovely vintage style crochet designs and ideas. If you're already a subscriber, hello and thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. Now in today's video it's going to be a tutorial on how to make my latest design, this crochet ruffle capelet. I've called it the Sweet Georgia, and I'm going to show you in a step-by-step easy tutorial how you can make it and wear it too. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love both of the colour schemes that I've used. I'll explain them to you in the video and at the end. And if you want to crochet along with me, you need some double knit yarn, a 4.5mm hook, and I shall see you in a moment. In this tutorial I'm going to be using the Shapier's Wanderlust double knit, and this colour for the tutorial is colour 452 Lake Louise. So I'm also going to be using a 4.5mm hook. Obviously you need some scissors, some stitch markers are useful, and some darn and needles to sew on your ends at the end. This tutorial will be in UK terms, so if you're watching from the US you need to be aware of that. And this tutorial is suitable for all skill levels, even beginners. It's perfectly fine. If you're a beginner and new to crochet, this is a fairly simple project for you to do. So let's begin. Right, so we're going to start off with making our slip knot. So we just need to make that whichever way you know how. I do have a tutorial on that if you need to refresh. We're going to start off with a chain of 96, so 96 chains. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that's how you do your chain. And we need to do 96 of those chains. 95 and 96, so you should have 96 chains all together. And we're going to form a ring, so we're going to slip stitch to the first chain. So we just need to make sure that it's not twisted, so if you just run your finger all the way along to make sure it's not twisted. And insert your hook into that first chain that we did at the beginning, and yarn over, pull through, and slip stitch closed. And now we're going to chain one, which does not count as a stitch, and we're going to go back down into that first stitch, and we're going to work half trebles. So if you're watching from the US, it will be a half double crochet. So yarn over, back down to that very first stitch, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over, pull through all three. Yarn over, down into the next, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, down into the next, work all the way along your 96 stitches, working half treble. And I shall see you somewhere around about here where we're going to join, and then we'll go on to the next row. So I'll just finish these last few. And last one. And we're just going to slip stitch to the top of our first half treble there. And just before we do that, just double check that your work is not twisted, because you don't want to continue on from here if it is. So just double check it's not twisted. And we're just going to now slip stitch to the top of that first half treble Okay, so that's our first round. Okay, so this tutorial for the capelet, we're working from the top down, and it consists mainly of the V-stitch. Really simple stitch, gives a lovely lacy effect. Very simple for you to achieve, especially if you're new to crochet. It's perfect for you. So what we're going to do is do our first V-stitch, and we're just going to chain 4, and then we're going to do a treble into that same stitch. And I'm just going to insert our hook into that third chain, and that's where we're going to slip stitch when we come back around. So then we're going to skip 1, and then we're going to insert our hook and do a treble, a chain 1, and another treble in the same stitch, and that's our V-stitch. So we're going to skip 1, and we're going to work a treble, chain 1, treble into the next stitch, and then we're going to skip 1, and then treble, chain 1, and treble into the same stitch, and that creates our lovely V-stitch. So we're going to continue around like so. Skip 1, work your V-stitch, which is treble, chain 1 and treble, skip 1, work your V-stitch, skip 1, V-stitch, so if you want to continue around like so, skip 1, V-stitch, skip 1, V-stitch. I shall see you somewhere around about here, and then we'll go on to join this row and then go on to the next row. Right, so I've just got one more V-stitch to go, so I'm just going to skip 1 and do our V-stitch. And I'm just going to share with you just a little tip when you're doing the V-stitch. So skip 1, and there's our first V-stitch that we did, and so we did 4 chains if you remember, and 3 of those chains act as our first treble, and that 4th chain acts as the chain between the 2. So we're just going to slip stitch to that 3rd chain where our stitch marker is, like so. Now if you were doing this, if you're following this tutorial and you're just using a single colour yarn, you could quite easily just start off the row with a chain 3 and then come along and finish off your V-stitch with a treble and a chain 1 to make the V at the end. But because we're using a colour changing yarn, if I had done that at the beginning and started off with a chain 3, go all the way along, and then come back here to finish off with a treble and a chain 1, this yarn is obviously darker than this yarn, so we would end up having half a V-stitch in 2 colours, and it wouldn't look right. So every time you go around, you're going to have a V-stitch at the beginning of each row, but it's going to have 2 colours, and it will show up, and it would be quite noticeable. So if you're doing one colour, fine, you don't have to worry. But if you're going to do your colour changing yarn or anything like that where the colour's going to change, do it this way with your 4 chain, so that acts as your 3 chain as your treble, your chain as your chain, and then obviously you've got your other treble there as your V-stitch. Do it that way, so when you do come round to the end, as you can see, this colour is much darker now. If I had done that, we would have half a V-stitch in the pale rose and the other half in this darker, almost black colour, and you would see, and it wouldn't look right. So that's just a little bit of a tip there if you're using this type of yarn. If you're using plain yarn, you don't have to worry because you wouldn't notice anyway. Right, so we'll move on to the next. So yet again, we're going to do exactly the same. So we're going to work our V-stitches now into the V's that we've already made. So we just need to move over into that space so we can start off this row. So we're just literally going to slip stitch across. There we go. And we're going to chain 3, insert our stitch marker if that helps you, and then chain 1 as we would normally, and then do another treble into that space, and there we have created our V-stitch of this row. And then we're going to go down into the next V-stitch, and we're just going to work treble, chain 1 and treble, and we're just going to do this all the way along, doing V-stitch into the V-stitch of the row below. So V-stitch into the V-stitch of the row below, so treble, chain 1 and treble into the next V-stitch of the row below, set your hook, treble, chain 1 and treble. So we're going to continue around like this to the other end, and I shall meet you here, and then we'll slip stitch a join, and then the next row we will be doing an increase row. Okay, so I'm down to the last V-stitch, so treble, chain 1 and treble, and we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that third chain there. We've got our stitch marker, and if you're not using a stitch marker, all you do is count up 1, 2, 3, insert your hook, oops, insert your hook, and slip stitch close. And can you see you've got a lovely even stitch there rather than finishing with 2 colours, so it blends in much easier. Right, so the next row we're going to go on, we're going to do an increase row. So we just need to be over that V, so we're just going to slip stitch across. So now we've got our hook exactly where we need to be, and we're just going to chain 3, insert our stitch marker into that third chain, chain 1, and then insert our hook and finish off with a treble for our first V-stitch. And into the next one we're going to work our first increase, so insert your hook into the next, so it's treble, chain 1, treble, and then chain 1 and then treble, and that's our increase. And then we're going to the next and work our V-stitch. And we need to work 7 V-stitches in total after our increase, so that was 1, 2, 3, and 1 more. So we've worked 7, we've done our increase, and we've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 V-stitches. So into the next we're going to work our increase, so it was treble, chain 1, treble, chain 1 and treble into that stitch, and then we're going to work 7 more V-stitches. Into the next we're going to work our treble increase, which is treble, chain 1, treble, chain 1, treble into the same stitch, then 7 more V-stitches, and then our V-stitch increase. So if you want to repeat that like me all the way around, working 7 V-stitches, then the V-stitch increase into the next, 7 V-stitches, V-stitch increase into the next, all the way around, and I shall see you somewhere round about here, and I'll show you how to go on the next round. So I've got the last V-stitch finished there, and we're just going to slip stitch again to close this round into that third chain. So if you didn't have a stitch marker, just count at 1, 2, 3, insert your hook, and slip stitch for that round. So for round 5 we're just going to slip stitch across again, so into the right position, and we're just going to V-stitch all the way around, no increase in this round. So chain 3, insert your stitch marker, chain 1, and then treble, and then we're just going to work V-stitch all around. So in the next one, which is our increase V-stitch, hope you can see that's quite a dark, onto the dark shade at the moment, we're just going to do our V-stitches into both of those spaces, so exactly as you used to do before. So treble, chain 1, treble into that first V-stitch and into the next one, treble, chain 1 and treble, like so, and then just V-stitch all the way along. So continue around, V-stitch in every V-stitch, and then just 2 V-stitches in the increase stitch that you had, and I shall see you somewhere around about here to slip stitch to join. So I'm just on the last V-stitch now of this round. I'm just going to slip stitch to that 3rd chain, like so, and that's round 5 completed. So we're going to move on to round 6, and this is going to be another increase row, so we just need to slip stitch across so we're in the right position. So we're now over that V, and we're just going to chain 3, insert your stitch marker, chain 1 more, and then treble down into that same stitch, and there's our first V, and we're going to increase in the next one. So we're going to insert our hook and do our V-stitch increase. So it's treble, chain 1, treble, chain 1, treble, and then we're going to work 8 V-stitches in this round. Work 8 V-stitches, then we'll do our increase, 8 V-stitches and do our increase. 7, and this is the 8th one in this round. And then we're going to do our increase in the next, so treble, chain 1, treble, chain 1, treble in the next, and then we're going to do 8 more V-stitches. So if you want to repeat the same as me, work in 8 V-stitches, then do your V-stitch increase, 8 V-stitches, V-stitch increase, and I shall see you somewhere round about here. Finish off row 6 and then we'll go on to row 7. So we're just at the end of this round, so I'm just going to slip stitch again to the top of that chain 3. So just remove our stitch marker, insert your hook and just slip stitch it closed. I'll move on to the next round, and the next round is just going to be V-stitches all around. So we're just going to slip stitch so we're in the right position. And we're just going to chain 3, insert our stitch marker, chain 1, then treble, and we're just going to V-stitch all around. So in the increase one from the row below, we just V-stitch into there and V-stitch into there, and just V-stitch all the way around. And when you get to here, we're going to slip stitch to the top of that third chain. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to the end of this row and slip stitch it closed. Then the next round will be an increase round, and then the next round after that will be just an ordinary V-stitch round. So we're increasing in every other round. So increasing your V-stitches in the increase round, so we're going from 9 V-stitches increase to the following one will be 10, then the following increase round will be 11, then the next increase round will be 12, and the final increase round will be 13 V-stitches and then our increase. So if you want to continue now just like so, and I shall see you at the end of round 16 where you should have 13 V-stitches, then your increase, 13 V-stitches, then your increase. So I shall see you on round 16. So I've just completed round 16, which is our last increase round. So we did it our last increase round, and there was 13 V-stitches in between the next increase round, and then I followed on with another round just of V-stitches. So that took us to round 17. So round 17 was just a row of V-stitches, so we're going to move on to round 18 before we put the ruffle on, the first ruffle. So we're on to round 18 now, and we're just going to chain 3, and we're just going to treble all the way around. So we're going to just treble in each of the trebles that we've made, not the V-stitch space but into the trebles. So that will be our first one there. So I'm just going to treble into the top of all the trebles along, so not the space, just the trebles. So if you want to continue just like me, working a row of trebles into the top of all the trebles, not the space, just the treble stitches. And I shall see you somewhere around about here, and then we're going to do the ruffle. So I'm just on the last few trebles, so I just need to do on the last one there, and we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that we did at the beginning. So 1, 2, 3, insert your hook, and slip stitch. So you now should have 180 trebles along this row. Now we're now going to go on to the ruffle. So we're going to be working in the front loops only. So this is the V of the stitch, and normally we insert our hook through both parts of the stitch. But for the ruffle we're going to be working in the front loop only, so just the front part of it. So insert your hook just in the front, like so. So we're going to chain 3 first, 1, 2 and 3, and that counts as our first treble, and into the front part of that stitch we're going to work another 4 trebles. So we're just going to pick up the front part and work 4 trebles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and into the next one we're going to work 5 trebles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're just going to do this all the way along, inserting your hook in the front part of the loop and work 5 trebles in every stitch, and that starts to create the ruffle. So if you want to continue now in every stitch through the front loop only, so insert your hook into the front loop only and work 5 trebles in every stitch, and I shall see you round about here. Then we'll go on to the second round of this ruffle. So I've just come to the almost the end of this ruffle row, so I've just got one set of 5 trebles to do in the front loop only. So I'll just finish those off. There we go, and we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that we did at the beginning. So just slip stitch to the top of that chain 3, and that completes our first part of the ruffle round. And for the second part of the ruffle, all we're going to do is chain 3 again, 1, 2 and 3, and that'll count as one of our first trebles, and we're just literally going to treble into every treble around. So every treble that we created in that ruffle, in both sections of the stitch for this round, not the front only but through both parts of the stitch, just going to treble all the way around. So there's quite a lot of trebles to do, so if you just want to work your way all the way around, working a treble in every treble through both loops of the stitch, and I shall see you somewhere around about here, and then we'll finish off this ruffle and then we'll go back on to the next section of the capelet. So I've done the second row on the ruffle, and I've just got to slip stitch to the top of the first 3 chain that we did. So just slip stitch like so, and just need to cut your yarn now and pull it through, and that's our ruffle completed. So now we're going to attach our yarn to the underside. So remember when we did the ruffle, we did the front loop only, so on the back we're left with the remainder, which is the back loops only. So we're going to work into the back loops that's left there. So just going to attach our yarn. So I'm just going to attach my yarn and pick up one of those back loops and bring the yarn through. And we're just going to work a row of trebles. So first of all we'll do chain 3, 1, 2 and 3, and we'll just work all the way along now in the remaining back loops with trebles. And you should have the right side of your capelet facing you with the ruffle, and we're working underneath, and then we're going to continue on obviously with the right side showing. So that's what we're going to do. So work all the way around now through that remainder back loop, just at the back of the frill there. Insert your hook and just treble. Just pick up that back part of the stitch all the way along. So there should be 180 for you to pick up, because we had 180 stitches if you remember before we started the ruffle. So work all the way along, picking up that back loop with trebles, and I shall see you somewhere round about here, and we'll go on to the remaining part of the capelet. So I've just got one more treble to go, and I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that we did at the beginning. Insert your hook and slip stitch, and now we're just going to continue on with our V-stitch from here on and to the next ruffle, which is at the end, and there's no more increases, so we're just literally going to V-stitch in every stitch. So we're just going to start off this row with our V-stitch now. So we're just going to chain 4, and we're just going to go back down into that same stitch with our treble. So that's our first V-stitch created, and we're going to skip one and then work our V-stitch in the next. So treble, chain 1, treble, skip one and V-stitch. So we're just going to continue around like this, working your V-stitch, skip one, V-stitch all the way around, and we'll come around to here and we'll slip stitch into that third chain, and that will complete that round. And we're going to work exactly the same for another 11 rows, so 12 V-stitch rows in total. So if you want to continue on working 12 rows of V-stitches, I shall see you towards the end of that 12th row, and we'll finish off with our last ruffle on the capelet. So okay, so I've got to the end of my 12 rows of V-stitch after the ruffle. So I've got 12 rows of V-stitch. I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3, and that completes that round. Now we need to go on to the bottom part of the ruffle, and we just need to do a row of trebles like we did for the ruffle there. So all we're going to do is chain 3, and that'll count as our first treble, and we're just going to insert our hook into the tops of all the trebles, not the spaces but just the tops of the trebles all the way around, just through the top, not the space, not that space, just the tops of the trebles. So if you want to continue just like me, working trebles all the way around, I'll just see you somewhere about here, and then we'll go on to the last part, which is the final ruffle on the edge. So I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 to finish off this row, and now we're ready to add that last ruffle on the end of the capelet. So we're just going to do exactly the same as we did for the other ruffle. So we're just going to chain 3, and working in the front loop only, we're going to do 5 trebles in every stitch, but we've done chain 3, so it acts as our first treble. So we're just going to do 4 more for this one. So there we have the 5. So just going to work 5 trebles in the front loop only for every stitch, just like the other ruffle. So we do 5 trebles in every stitch around in the front loop only, 5 trebles in the front loop only, and we work all the way around. We get to this point, we will slip stitch to the top of that chain 3, and then we will work another round of chain 3 to start with, and then treble in every stitch just like we did for the other ruffle, treble in every stitch all the way around, and slip stitch to close. So if you want to complete the ruffle as before, and I shall see you towards the end of the ruffle, and then our capelet will be complete. So I shall see you in 2 rows time. So I'm just got to the end of that second row of the ruffle. I think I've got 1 more treble to do. I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that we did at the beginning. And just going to trim off the yarn. Pull it through. Quickly, and I'll show you how to sew in your ends. Just turn it over to the back, and just need to weave your needle through some stitches from the back and just pull it through so it makes it nice and neat. And a few more, and just go back the other way just to secure it. Just trim that yarn. And there we have a gorgeous vintage style ruffle capelet. How pretty is that? Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I know I did. I absolutely love this design I've just done, the Sweet Georgia capelet. I've used the Shape Ease double knit Wanderlust yarn. This is the New York shade. Absolutely gorgeous. Spin the mannequin around so you can see the colours. Really autumnal, rustic colours. And the one that I'm wearing that we did in the tutorial is the Lake Louise. Love these colours too. Really pretty. But you don't have to use that yarn. You can use any double knit yarn, as I said in the tutorial. If you did like this video, please don't forget to give me that thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell as well. And then you'll be kept up to date with every video that I bring out. I'm hoping to bring out lots more of tutorials showing my designs, and then you can create them yourself and go out and wear them too. If you like the capelets, I do have other tutorials, so check them out as well. But until next time, as I always say, I've really enjoyed making this one. I hope you did too. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And until the next time, as I always say, practice does make perfect, but happy crochet.